Welcome to our channel Behind My Story. Please like, share, and subscribe.
A suspicious mind can be a gift or a curse, depending on how a person uses it. Lend me your ears and listen to my story. My name is Sasha, and I am 21 years old. I have a suspicious mind. I see an Indian behind every tree. I suspect anyone and everyone of having ulterior motives and designs. If anyone makes any claim, I will research it to determine its veracity. If anyone looks at me, my mind goes through 10 different scenarios of what scheme that person is plotting to take advantage of me. I trust no one. So, as you might imagine, I don't have many friends, and I've never had a boyfriend. I just naturally assume all people are two-faced scalawags. So, without further ado, I will tell you that one day I was dumbfounded when I realized that I was falling in love with my neighbor Brandon. He was a weird, introverted guy who looked and behaved just like a vampire. Data gathering, you know. I noticed that I never saw him in the daylight, only at nighttime when he went to work. Like me, he didn't have many friends, and he didn't speak much. Everyone I knew agreed that he was definitely a weirdo. But there was something about him I liked. He was my cup of tea. I explored his Facebook page and concocted silly reasons to need to talk to him. We would meet and chat on numerous occasions, and I discovered that he liked me and was watching me too. He asked me to marry him one day, and I accepted immediately. It was difficult persuading my family that he was an okay guy, but I managed to convince them. I felt that he had a mysterious streak in his character, some dark secret in his life. But I was attracted to that and was okay with it. We prepared for our wedding reception. I did errands in the mornings and he did errands in the evenings. Then night actually, came when we got married. As we spent more time together, I noticed that Brandon seemed very sensitive to bright lights. If any place were too well lit, he would make up an excuse and ask to leave. I noticed that his face was always pale. I noticed that his room at home had only a small lamp, and he liked his steaks exceedingly rare and bloody. Whenever he happened to see an injury, he would gaze hungrily at the oozing blood, just like I've seen in vampire movies. I truly wondered if he might be an actual vampire. One day I walked into his room, and when he looked up and saw me, his smile was creepy and eerie. I teased him and asked him not to hurt me, and he smiled. He offered to tell me a secret if I promised not to tell anyone. He told me that he had been hiding a dark secret for a long time, and he longed to share it with me. I held my breath. It was coming. He was going to confess to being a vampire. I was crestfallen when he instead told me that he had a rare illness that accounted for his pale face and rendered him sensitive to light. He said he was tired of keeping the secret to himself and felt relieved to have someone to share it with. I hugged him, crying, and told him that I didn't mind at all. And here I was, so sure my husband was a vampire. Am I insane or what?
7 years old can be a very critical age in a human's life. It's the year we graduate from first grade to second grade. It also may be the year when you first participate in a sport that will shape your future. But for me, it was the age when my parents decided they wanted to lead separate lives. I grew up like any average girl, attended a good preschool, participated in sports, and had good friends. My parents, as I recall, were always in a good mood with each other and shared the joy of raising their daughter together. I have few memories of the bad times my parents had argued. The worst memory I recall is lying in my bed one night when I was 7 years old and having my parents come into my room and my father saying, "Tanya, your mother and I are getting a divorce." My immediate reaction was a natural instinct for a young child, which was to blame myself. I often had more than one birthday party as a kid. This sounds cool, but it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. I'm a child of divorce. My childhood wasn't mine, it belonged to my parents. I lost myself in every effort to appease each side of my family. Shuffling alone between two separate lives meant that I was on the fringe of each family, never an insider. The people I loved most were never in the same room together, and many of them barely even knew each other existed. I missed out on events and celebrations because I would have to spend time with my other family. Children of divorce learn to cope with these struggles and instability by the age of 10. I no longer wanted to deal with it. I didn't want to live in two different homes with two different bedrooms, different clothes, different toys, different friends, and even different rules. I was a 10-year-old caught between a rock and a hard place. So one day I told my dad that I didn't want to visit anymore. It was a courageous and ignorant act, to be honest. We will never know if it was the right decision or not. But at the time, neither one of my parents possessed the emotional stability it would have taken to unearth a more positive solution. And so that was the way things went. The power struggle that had lain dormant between my parents erupted again, and this time it was directed at me. This time I was responsible for the discord. In one house, I was blamed. In the other, I was a victim. There were no more multiple birthday parties. Instead, there was stability and consistency in one house, anger and avoidance in the other. Choice is met with consequences, and as time went on, I fell out of touch with my dad's family. It's hard to stay in touch with people connected to someone we have pushed away. Cousins I used to play with were erased from my life. We never visited again. Was that because it's best to keep served ties cut? Or was it my punishment for being a horrible child? All I knew was silence and loss. When I was in my early teens, my mom remarried and I met new cousins. I learned new Christmas traditions and sat with new kids at the dinner table. Instead of being ushered from one family to the other, life settled down. Even though I heard from my dad only once or twice a year, life was fairly stable. But that changed again when my mom and stepdad split up during my first year of university. I tried to keep in touch with my family members every time I went home for the holidays. Again, I tried to please everyone while anxiety flooded my thoughts. Whom should I spend Christmas Eve with? Should I visit with this family or that one? Will they be offended if I don't make time to see them? Will they be offended if I don't bring presents? I would have loved to have everyone drop by and visit me, but that would not have gone very well at my mom's house. Instead, I diligently visited everybody on my own, carrying thoughtful little presents I bought on my student budget. I would make small talk and feel like an outsider. I was always the awkward guest, never the welcoming host. For 10 years after I graduated from university, I lived away from home. Not a single family member from any one of my four families, save for my mom, came to visit, called, or even let me know when they flew through town. Yet, every time I went home for Christmas, I scheduled visits, bought presents, and made time to see as many people as I could. I did this to make them feel good, not me. 2 years ago, I moved back home, and now I live less than a day's drive away from all four of my families, their new spouses, and young kids. We're all connected on Facebook, but my mom is still the only person who ever calls or visits. When I hear that a family member passed through town but didn't call, it saddens me. But I realized that they don't call because they don't really know me. To them, I was never a fixture. I was only ever around a few Christmases here and there, and although they were my family, I was never theirs. They don't know that they are just one of several people spread across four different families that I wasn't able to keep in touch with. Sometimes divorce spreads us too thin to make anything real, lasting family connections. This summer, I am getting married and starting my family. I'm trying not to have too many expectations. I know no family is perfect, but my soon-to-be husband is the king at keeping in touch with people. He's persistent, charismatic, forgiving, and loyal. He's teaching me what family means. Together, we will teach our kids to reach out to one another with compassion and to stick by each other through times of darkness. I'm looking forward to joy and friendship with my new family, and I plan to do everything I can to stay married.